From the beginning, the images we have created have stood like mile markers on the road of human progress. What once was is now because artists made it so. They captured a moment and made it eternal. Where did they get such power? Well, it was given to them, passed down through the ages, master to student, each building upon the other. John Stobart, one of the most accomplished artists of our time, says, "I don't think the greatest works have yet been done." And it's true, but only if the secrets are given to yet another generation. The first secret is this: it is not in the hand, it is in the eye. Follow us and we'll show you that once you learn to look at the world differently, it becomes a different world, one in which nature becomes the greatest teacher of all. Painting from nature doesn't always mean sitting on the edge of a stream or gazing into a harbor. In the charming southern city of Savannah, John Stobart paints a cityscape and demonstrates that art is about interpreting reality.
What a lovely day. What do you tell people about Savannah when they come down?
Well, I tell them that it's probably one of the cities in the south that you'll find a lot of southern hospitality, definitely, especially down here in the historic district. A lot of people live here. It's their home. They're very proud of the buildings. They're very proud of the southern hospitality, and they're always very nice to the tourists. It's just a very homey kind of place to live.
Yeah, I've experienced that actually. I do find that that is the case because I've been coming quite a few years, and I've always appreciated that hospitality too. What were you going to say about this square, Jill?
This is Johnson Square, and this was the first square ever laid out here in Savannah by General Oglethorpe. And the square used to have the public ovens in it, the public wells, and it was the public meeting place. It had the sundial here in Johnson Square. So this was pretty much the lifeblood of the city. The monument there in the center is actually for a man from Rhode Island. His name's Nathaniel Greene. Yeah, he's from Rhode Island. He was a general during the Revolutionary War, and he was second in command to George Washington. And he was the commanding general here at the Siege of Savannah in 1779. So John, you've visited Savannah quite a few times, living so close on Hilton Head. What do you think is the best thing about Savannah?
Having concentrated on marine painting, I think probably I like the port down by the water, the old warehouses and that sort of thing, and those different levels of the streets that are behind the warehouses. I think that's a very charming thing. But of course, the squares are really Savannah, aren't they? And the way the city was set up, that really says Savannah, doesn't it?
Yeah, I wonder if Oglethorpe knew how beautiful it was going to end up when he decided to lay the city out in squares.
It would be nice if he could sort of step right back into it and look at it for a minute.
If he could just see it.
Yeah. Now, what square are we in now?
We are now in Chippewa Square. This is the home of Oglethorpe. His statue's here in the middle of the square.
This is really the center of Savannah.
Yes, it's the center of the historic district, and it's more of a rectangular shaped square. It mirrors Johnson Square. And yeah, they wanted to put Oglethorpe right in the middle of the city, and he's also facing south because Georgia was a protective barrier between South Carolina and the Spanish down in Florida, so Oglethorpe's still facing south, guarding us from the Spanish down there, making sure they don't come up to attack.
And this building here?
That is the First Baptist Church. That is the only church in the historic district that has not burnt down at one time or another.
Oh, really?
Yep. Everybody teases the Baptists burnt down everybody else's churches, but that's not true. They were just smart enough to build theirs out of stone in the first place.
And now this is Madison Square right ahead, isn't it? Oh, what a lovely way to travel around the square in such a nice...
There's a good navigator.
Yeah.
They show him for the city.
Who's in the middle of this square?
That is Sergeant William Jasper. He was a Revolutionary War hero from South Carolina. And he fought with us during the Revolutionary War at the Siege of Savannah in 1779.
That'll be done. Well, I love the way these oak trees have such long beams and they cover such an area, don't they?
Yeah, they sure. Some of them get so big and heavy they touch the ground.
The whole thing is like an umbrella.
Yeah.
And then what I also love about it is the church chimes. Oh, I like this here. Oh, this is nice. Oh, I think I'm going to get off here, Jill. Thank you. Now, the city was founded by James Oglethorpe in 1732, who came over here in a ship called the Anne from England. And he was supposed to establish commerce here and also to create a buffer zone between the English colonies in the north and the Spanish in Florida. And that was the purpose of him coming here and designing this beautiful city. And he designed it on the grid system. And it was the first designed city in America. Now, first of all, I'm going to establish where the corner of that building is, which I want way over. The building will be from here to here. Very sharp perspective in the pathway here. There we are. My horizon line is about there. Where these join, there's the horizon line. Down a bit for that. There we are. Now this is the pathway. Now I know there's a lot of pathway here, but what we'll do with that, we'll cast shadows over it. And as you see, there are patches of color here. So even though there's a big triangle there, it's not going to spoil things. It'll probably enhance it. Now I'll delineate the shape of the building. That's the next thing to do, which is right there. And we're going to have it about that high, going along. I want to be able to see down this side of the building into the distance. I always like to be able to see the distance in all the compositions I do. We haven't got much distance here, but there's a little hole there that invites you to go into the distance and see what's there. I'm going to move that slightly over that way. There's the staircase. And we'll have the building about there. And that lovely window now will be right in that position. The next window up will be there. And then the balcony goes right across at about that level there. That's got a nice, I like that little angle there because this piece here comes right down onto that. That's a very good compositional thing there where that little curve comes right down and the edge of the shadow there points towards this way because we've got everything going this way at the moment, and that's a good line to establish right there. And a lot of the shadows are coming down onto the house. They're coming this way. A lot of that's the sort of look we want. Now I'll put Again, even though I'm blocking in, I want to get as accurate as I can with some of the color. Look at that horse going by. That horse looks lovely. There we are. Very simple strokes. Now I'll put this tree. The trees are going to frame everything here. My introduction to Savannah was back in 1973 or 4. And what had happened was that a very well-known, very prominent illustrator by the name of Joe DeMars, who lived on Hilton Head Island, was assembling a collection of paintings for a newspaper corporation here in Savannah. I was very flattered because Joe came up to Westport, Connecticut, where I had a studio then, and he asked me if I'd do a special painting of Savannah for this collection. And so I was rather thrilled, actually. And what they wanted was the steamship Savannah leaving Savannah in 1819. And it was the first steamship to cross any ocean. This lovely old building called the Sturgis House, where my painting now hangs in the, what was the dining room, I believe. And that's where the ship was conceived. And it's very thrilling for me to know that that painting now is in this perfect location. Now, what happened was, as soon as I got here, I'd come over from Hilton Head Island with Joe in a car, and we went immediately to the old waterfront, which is right on the Savannah River. And here are a whole lot of warehouses in a row right along the riverfront. I don't think there's anything quite like that anywhere in the world, and this is what really caught my attention. And this, of course, was what I was to paint for this picture, specially commissioned for this collection. And so that was the start of my Savannah experience, and I really was excited about getting into that. These wonderful buildings, the warehouses, of course, are stone built, many of them. Many of them are brick built, but they have lovely shutters and ironwork on them, and the stonework is mixed in with the brickwork, and they are really a picture to behold. And right at the end of the waterfront, there's a very old stone staircase that is circular. It goes around the circular end of the bluff, which was walled. And that I found absolutely fascinating. I love that. You can't always be right on the seashore or in the middle of a field or whatever. You've got to choose whatever appeals to you. This happens to be a very difficult one, but it'll show just what's involved in painting a view of a cityscape. The main feature of the painting, as I see it, is that window, which I'm going to put in right there. Using a big brush to establish exactly what's going on. On this painting, I'm using what they call parallel perspective, in which all the lines going this way are parallel to each other. Now, in parallel perspective, the rule is that you've got to stay within a 60-degree angle from the viewpoint. I'm the viewpoint. Otherwise, the lines begin to go together at the left and right. They start to vanish. But here we're well within our parameters of 60 degrees. We're only, I would think here, we're only probably 20 degrees at the most. So we could go all the way across here and all the way to here before worrying about the the distortion. Keeping it very simple, using a big brush. I'm just really establishing this now and getting a bit of color on here. I see there's a little more pink in that than I have. The sun's moving down, and as the sun moves down, this will all get much warmer. I want to try and establish a nice warm tone on this building. And again, I'm playing around with it, and I'm trying to get some color on here that will get nice and tacky, so that when I begin to do the detail, it'll pull the paint off the brush. We're spending a lot of time in this show showing you how painting is done. What we would like to do is to show you how to prepare to paint. And one of the most important parts of that is actually getting the canvas ready so that it's just right for what you want. Each individual artist is going to have a different way of doing it. Let's see how I do it. Now I'm going to impart a big secret which I've held very closely for quite a few years. And that is the way I prime canvases. What I really want to do is to get rid of this canvas tooth, I call it. And I want it to be much smoother than this, and I want the holes to be filled up, a lot of these holes. So I give it 2 or 3 coats. And this is how I do it. This is acrylic dresser. And then I take a credit card and we do like this. Now this pushes the paint into the holes so that it doesn't waste a lot of paint. See, I'm a very frugal person. I was brought up in England, and we don't want to waste anything here. Make sure every little bit of this works. Oh, I did well here. I got just the right amount out. Now this will take approximately 5 minutes to dry. The second coat will take hardly any time at all to dry. Now I just go like this. There we are. And then I do a diagonal. And the next time I do it, the diagonal will be the other way. There we are. Now each time I do this, just take that edge like that. Now I've taken the buildup of gesso on the edge, which otherwise would take a long time to move if I did move the canvas. Now, that'll just make sure that the 2 surfaces are knitted together right. Now the next coat. Oh, that's wonderful. Now the final coat I always put on with a brush, so that it's got a little brush texture on it. There we go. And then, of course, the very final thing I do is that I like to tone it. Now, as I say, I'm putting a coating on this of beige, which is, I like this color. This is a nice earth color, burnt sienna. There we are. Now that will be perfect to paint into. Now I'm taking a bit of this green out here, which is the complement of the color that I'm going to put under it, which is a very warm orange, which I like because there's a little shaft of sunlight there. And one of the things I'm going to do is liven up this foreground by putting a nice shaft of sunlight over these bricks. So we need a nice bright spot there. And here we've got to create a dappled feeling. This is dappled with sunlight, this whole area. And one of the best spots in it is right there. Those leaves. I always remember staying in this apartment block in California, which was a very wonderful place and very comfortable, but I'd see a leaf fall off a tree, and as soon as the leaf started to fall, there'd be a rumbling noise in the distance. And the next thing, there's a man hit here with a vacuum to vacuum the leaf away somewhere. And now what I'm looking for here is light and shade. And it's very important to get the... See, I've got a dark tree going... Well, there's a little bit of light even hitting the tree, but I want to make a contrast here of light and shade. I've got a nice bit of bright foliage there. That pathway there, there's a nice little pool of light, and it's these pools of light coming between the trees that'll give the effect of light here. Now the bottom of that shadow is slightly grayer than the top of the shadow. And the reason is that there's more reflected light going up into that dark bit right under there. So it gets cooler as the shadow starts there, and it gets cooler towards the bottom of it. I think it's very important to remember that to stay with the bigger brushes and not get carried away with the detail too much. I always remember hearing about Churchill when somebody taught Winston Churchill to paint. And they told him to be sure to always use big brushes. Throw away all these little brushes. They don't come into the thing at all. And he took their advice and did that. And look at his paintings. They're wonderful. Paintings of Morocco, very broadly done. And you find a way of indicating the detail without using a tiny brush if you just keep at it and stay with the bigger brushes. Always make the bold statement. This what I'm doing here now is almost too fiddly, but unfortunately it is the key of this view, is this Georgian look of that building. We've got to give the illusion that drapes are behind the glass, and they're very pale beige, almost the same color as the brick, but a little bit greener. This is what drawing's all about. You've got to get the drawing fairly accurate, otherwise it'll look terrible. Maybe a little controversial for me to say this, but I trace the demise of art education in America to the emergence of abstract art, abstract painting, which happened really in a rather big way about 30 years ago. Now, what happened at that time was that the student of art was led to believe that just playing with color and shapes was art in itself. and was influenced to give up learning the basics of drawing and painting because those were deemed to be not necessary. Now, what happened was a lot of these students went on into the teaching profession. And since they hadn't learned the basics and fundamental system of drawing and painting, they couldn't pass it on to their students because they had no knowledge of this. Now, prior to that time, there was an unbroken chain all the way back to the old masters. But since that chain, that connection with the past and all that expertise that grew over all those centuries has gone. It's suddenly evaporated. Now, it's not too late. There are more and more colleges that I hear of that are leaning back and thinking about this, I know. But something's got to be done so that this unbroken chain can carry on and that the whole business doesn't slip right through our fingers. It's a risky business. Putting things right over good things you've done, but this is what happens. Just got to keep on going and do what's there. And if you really concentrate on it while you're doing it, it'll look real. Most artists develop formulas for their work, and they stick to these formulas. But in doing so, they miss the major point, which is what nature is doing outside. Nature is doing a lot of interesting things that doesn't fit the formula. And this is the advantage that you have when you go out and paint from nature, is that there isn't time to worry about all that. You've got to relate to what's in front of you and get right on with that.